You're listening to
Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. Way below acceptable. Way below acceptable.
On this week's episode,
it really was out of necessity. I happened upon organizing, and being from New Mexico and from the community that I was caring for, I was able to then become an organizer, talking with the community to build power and change the system.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Sticky Note Conversations. Before we begin today, let me tell you a little bit about our guest, Erica Gallegos. Erica Gallegos is the co-director of the Childcare for Every Family Network. She's been organizing in New Mexico and working with childcare providers, parents, and community leaders for 12 years. She began her organizing work as a labor organizer, working with the American Federation of Teachers to organize childcare centers in New Mexico. In 2018, she started working at Ole, Organizers in the Land of Enchantment, as a community organizer, where she worked with the New Mexico Center on Law and Poverty to recruit plaintiffs for a 2018 suit against the New Mexico Children, Youth, and Families Department for illegal practices that have prevented eligible parents from obtaining child care assistance. Most recently, Erica worked as the policy director at Ole, playing a key role during the New Mexico legislative session, along with coalition members, to ensure key pieces of legislation passed, including the New Mexico Early Education Constitutional Amendment and paid sick leave. Before working in organizing, Erica was an early childhood educator in Maryland Public Schools and in a private child care center in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Erica holds a BA in psychology from the University of New Mexico and is a mother to a 13-year-old and a 5-year-old. So without further ado, let's hear from Erica, and of course, our host, Erica.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Are you?
Yeah.
How is New Mexico?
Well, New Mexico is okay. There's a lot happening there. Right now with the implementation after passing the constitutional amendment, there's a lot of work. I'm not in the mix anymore.
So let me back up. The constitutional amendment, this is for child care. Mm-hmm. This is for child care to begin at birth. Mm-hmm. So daycare is included in child care
and
early education. So instead of just being K through 12 funding, it's birth through 12 funding. So that child care is a part of the state's budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so New Mexico has the second largest education fund in the nation. It's like $22 billion. So we worked on for 12 years to pass a constitutional amendment to use that 1% of that fund to fund early ed and childcare. And so after 12 long years, we were able to pass that. It passed through the voters at more than 70% of the vote. And now they're in the implementation phase, working on increasing wages, particularly because they're still really low for childcare providers.
I've always wondered why childcare providers are not just considered teachers and why they aren't looped into Black teachers unions and other things. Is there a reason for that you know of, or like why?
Yeah.
Why does that happen?
Well, you know, the childcare system itself has a really long racist history. Really starting at slavery, right? Using Black and brown bodies to care for children. And that history presents itself today in that Black, brown immigrant women are caring for our children, and those childcare providers are not viewed as teachers, often because there's this thought that like you need to have a degree to be able to be considered a teacher, right? And when I started my organizing career, I was at the teachers union organizing childcare centers, those educators in the classroom, and talking with educators across the state of New Mexico that had to write lesson plans and follow child development and receive training every year, and were required to do even go back to school, many of them, and were required to do all the things that traditional teachers do, but weren't getting paid those wages, right?
So, and that sounds like teachers' work.
It is. It really is, right? And when we would go to the legislature, people would, elected officials would often say, oh, you're just babysitters. Kids can't learn at that age. Even newborns are not learning, when all of the research, and that's when they're learning the most.
I'm going to say, right? So learning how to sit up and how to hold a spoon.
How to speak.
How to speak. Like
how to speak whatever language that they're immersed in.
How to move this over here, the cognitive skills of just getting something into a box or whatever. They don't consider that
even
learning.
Even the simplest, there's toys that babies play with where they're like putting a block into the right hole.
Right.
Holding that block is developing the muscles in your hand to later be able, that small block, right, to later be able to hold a pen and write with it. So there's all of this child development that goes into research-backed child development that goes into the curriculum. But when it comes to paying them what they're worth, that's where we're lacking, right? So ensuring that right now, after that constitutional amendment passed, the organization and the coalition that I was a part of are in the thick of ensuring that wages increase, as well as access for parents and providers, particularly in a lot of rural areas of New Mexico. There's a childcare desert, right? There you just don't have access to care. And so trying to increase the access, trying to increase wages, there's still a lot of work there to be done.
So when I think about that work, and you said 12 years. Was that 12 years to get it to the ballot, or 12? And did it have only on the ballot once?
It only had to get on there once.
Okay.
It was very popular. It was always popular with the voters. We just couldn't get it past the legislature to the voters.
I see. And so what was that fight like? Like what? Because I think people see the success on that side, and they're like, yeah, we won. But when you say it took 12 years, like, what was that pathway like? And did you think that for any time that it wasn't going to happen?
Throughout the 12 years, I often questioned whether or not we were actually going to win, because it was a really long and hard fight. At the legislature, when we would go out into the community and talk with voters, the general public, with parents and childcare providers, it made so much sense, because we're using this fund that already exists to fund education. We weren't increasing taxes. It was money that was being accumulated every single year through oil and gas revenue, and in New Mexico, and through investments in Wall Street. Like, they were investing the money to grow that fund. So it wasn't going to come out of anyone's pocket.
What was the pushback? Why didn't they want it?
Well, so it's an education fund, and lots of elected officials viewed childcare as babysitting. They don't learn there, right? And so over the years, we would take parents and childcare providers to the legislature to educate them on what really happens in the classroom. And so we did things like, one year we bused a bunch of childcare providers and kids to the roundhouse, and we did what we called circle time sit-ins, where childcare providers sat down with their kids and held a circle time, and because we were inviting these legislators throughout the year to come to the classroom to see the actual learning that was happening in the classroom, and they wouldn't show up. So we said, all right, we're going to go to you then. Yeah. We're going to take the learning to you. And so we plopped ourselves all around our state legislature and the Capitol building, and held circle times and invited legislators to come and see that learning. It took a long time. It took a lot of conversations with legislators. And then at the end of the day, we had to take a C4 strategy to actually ensure that we could get it past the legislature and to the voters.
As you're talking, one thing I keep thinking of is like when you say that they thought it was just babysitting. It's not, obviously, but even if it was babysitting.
Exactly. Yes.
Children still need to be cared for.
Exactly.
And they need to be cared for, and it costs a lot of money to do. And when we think about infrastructure of just our economic infrastructure, childcare is needed, whether it's a babysitter or a childcare provider or a public school. They need somewhere to go because parents have to go to work. And there's no way around that. So I guess I'm still struggling with the idea that we have to push so hard all the time to explain this to folks who go out into the community and vie for votes and say that they understand what the working class needs and they understand what their constituents need, and then you have to like babystep them through it for 12 years. They actually don't. You don't at all.
And this is why we ended up having to take a C4 strategy in New Mexico.
And when you say a C4 strategy, what does that mean?
So we had to help some legislators find new jobs. As my colleague in New Mexico likes to say, we worked so hard to bring constituents to elected officials, particularly those that had a lot of power in our state legislature. And they just would never budge. And many of them would and were understanding over time the importance of care and childcare and early ed in their communities. But the ones that just would not budge, we decided to help them find new jobs. And the very next year, we were able to get the constitutional amendment passed out of the legislature.
So what made you decide to become an organizer?
Well, I was a childcare provider. I worked in a childcare center in Albuquerque, where I'm from, and also in Maryland public schools. I moved from Maryland home to Albuquerque, and I was making $12.50 an hour. And I am first generation college graduate in my family, and I did not work that hard to get a degree and get paid $12 an hour. And the center director came to me and asked if I would be interested in going back and getting my master's degree. And I thought, sure, are you gonna pay for it?
Right.
But they don't have the money, right? She didn't have the money to pay for my degree or increase my wages or even offer healthcare or retirement. And so it really was out of necessity. I happened upon organizing and realized that through the experiences that I had being a childcare worker and being from New Mexico and from the community that I was caring for, I was able to then, from the other side of it, become an organizer, talking with the community to build power and change the system. So I happened upon it, but I'm really grateful that I'm in the space that I'm in to work with my community to build power.
What did you want to go to school for? What did you think you'd be doing?
I got a degree in psychology with a minor in Chicano studies. And I knew I wanted to work with kids. I really wanted to change things in my community, having grown up in poverty and in, my family, their first language was always Spanish. They would get in trouble for speaking Spanish in school. They just dealing with a lot of racism and white supremacy, right, in the community, and just knowing that I wanted to help make change in my community.
So you're born and raised in Albuquerque.
I am, yeah.
How has Albuquerque changed since you were little to where it is now? What's it like for, especially people who've never been there? What do you want people to know about Albuquerque?
Yeah. I love Albuquerque. My family is from all over New Mexico. And New Mexico is a majority Latino state. And there's just so much rich and beautiful culture.
When I think of Albuquerque, and I've been a few times, I went to knock doors for the Constitutional Amendment, which was fun. But also, one thing I loved is that everyone has chili peppers. Hanging outside their house. And I remember the first time I went and I was like, oh, that's cute, they have chili peppers. Oh, they do too.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, everybody, I was like, oh, you're supposed to have, I was like, what does it do? Does it ward off ghosts or something? Like, why does everybody have chili peppers on their front door?
Okay, so it's called a chili ristra.
A chili ristra. Ristra.
Yeah.
So the second, okay.
And
I try to roll my R's as often as possible.
And you did really well.
Why,
not all people can roll their R's. And so the what it is, you know, when you pick chilies out of the ground, they're green. And what they do is they tie them all together in the ristra and they hang it out in the sun to dry. And when it dries, it turns into the red chili. And then you take those dried red chilies and you make the New Mexico red chili. And then you can take the green peppers and roast them and make the green chili. So that's why people have them hanging up so that they can dry and they have, you know, the chili through the winter season. So we pick the chili in September. And that's when we start to roast it or to make the ristras so that they can dry.
Oh, it's also very pretty.
Yes, it is very pretty. Yes. And often people use them as decoration and never actually pull the red chili.
I'm like, you're not going to convince me that everybody in the neighborhood is at the end.
The original purpose of a ristra is to dry the chilies and have them, you know, through the winter season.
Now it's in home goods.
But now they're just, now it's in home goods, exactly.
Well, it does. It's very cool to see. And it's very unique, I think, to New Mexico, because I don't think I've ever seen it in Arizona. I assume maybe they might grow there too, but I've never seen anybody doing that. Or Nevada, for that matter.
Yeah, there's, we have this ongoing feud with Colorado that, you know, where does the chili originate, New Mexico or Colorado? And we make them differently. But, you know, the reality is we always say in New Mexico and in the Southwest that the border crossed us, right? Like our families have always been in New Mexico. My family has always been in New Mexico. Although, you know, I always say as well that I have both the colonized and the colonizer blood, right? That lineage. So my native roots have always been in New Mexico, but I also have Spanish roots. Anyway, either way, so when New Mexico was still part of Mexico, my family was there. And then we were recolonized and the border crossed us. And so there's a lot of a mixture of Spanish, Native American, and European like cultures that have come together in New Mexico and in the Southwest.
You're listening to
Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington.
How far back can you go in your family? You said that you all originated from New Mexico. Have you done research? You've been able to go pretty far back?
I have. Yeah, I can probably go back to my great-great-great-grandmother.
That's cool.
It is. Yeah.
That's very cool.
And I know that we have Chiricahua Apache blood. Before my grandfather passed, we did one of those like DNA tests and he had like 51% native blood. But that being said, I was not raised in the native culture and so would not want to. I don't claim native because I wasn't raised in the native culture, but I do claim lineage, right? And so out of respect for native culture, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't try to, for instance, go and register with the Apache Nation.
When you all found out that your grandfather had this much Native blood, did you all do more research on that tribe and more about them? And did you find some connection there?
Trying to. Yeah, I have a lot of family. I mean, you know, family. They not all of my family. There's a lot of decolonization that needs to happen in my family, right? So some of my family will say, oh, yes, we're Native American, but then they don't respect the culture and the people that are living today, right? And so trying to do some of that research and understand that lineage and hold that pride while still being respectful, it's a balance, right? Yeah, but some of my family is like, oh, we can register and get some free, I don't know, so trying to hold that for them and with them as well.
And I've seen that in a lot of families. There's something about wanting to claim Native culture, I think.
Yes.
I don't know if it's just because it looks cool to some folks, or also, I think, and this is my personal opinion, that sometimes when we don't have a full grasp and understanding of where we came from, or and we can grasp onto anything, that we just do that. Because we're all longing to be able to go back as far as you did, if not further. And I know for me, I can't go back any further than Alabama. Now, mind you, I have not done the DNA test, and I've wanted to, but I've also been on the fence about it, because I'm like, yes. Because you could also, if you see my picture, you could just say, yeah, you're part Nigerian. Okay. Sure. If you tell me that, then I don't, but I don't have any proof of anything past what you're telling me, right? It's no different than the electric company telling me how much electricity I use. I can't prove I didn't use that much. I don't know. I don't know how to count kilowatts. That's a whole nother story. Right. But thinking about how we want so much to belong to something, to somewhere, and have these deep-rooted connections. I see why sometimes, because if you look at certain Native tribes, how much they've been trying to hold on to what little pieces they can, and keep that going. So stuff that's been going on for hundreds of years, and they have some of the same traditions that their ancestors did, and I think it's beautiful.
It is.
How hard it is to hold on to something, especially when you've been colonized and things have been beat out of you, basically, and forced out of you. So I think there's this longing, and that's a lot of reasons why people may do that.
Well, I mentioned earlier the fact that my family, my mom is one of 8 children.
Oh, wow.
And she's the second, she's number 7. And her oldest siblings, the first maybe 4, their first language was Spanish. And when they started to go to public school, they would get in trouble for speaking Spanish. And so my cousins and my mom, the younger kids, the younger generation, we don't speak fluent Spanish for this reason, right? And so very similarly to what you're saying, that culture, and it was stripped from us.
What type of trouble would they get in?
The smack on the hand, and I don't know all of it, but that sort of smack on the hand, with a ruler, and
back when corporal punishment was okay in school,
exactly,
the teacher could beat you up. I'm thinking about that because I don't know if you've ever seen that show, the Taylor Sheridan show. 1924, I think that's what it's called. Is it called 1924 or 1923? I think it's 1924. Anyway, it's a spinoff of Yellowstone. So there's Yellowstone, it had Kevin Costner in it, and then it was 1888, and then there's 1924, and it's all about this family or whatever, fictional family. But in the 1924 spinoff that season, they did spend some time concentrating on the Native folks that lived in that area, and how a lot of them had to go to the school, had to go to the Christian school, where basically everything was, washed out of them, and they show, and he was very graphic. It was really hard to watch. On one hand, I really appreciate the fact that he didn't like pussyfoot around it or whatever, but it was really hard to watch these nuns like beating these children and scrubbing them and telling them how dirty they were and all of this, until the one girl beat the nun up and ran away. And it was very satisfying to watch that too.
Sounds satisfying.
It was. But thinking about these schools that they erected all over the place to tell them that you get to cut your hair, which was a really sacred
culturally
thing.
significant.
Yes, yeah. And making them cut their hair and raping them. There was a lot of rape happening. There was a lot of abuse happening, and it was awful. And then tell them they couldn't speak their language.
Exactly.
And they had to learn English and all of that. And how traumatizing, that was, and how much, and this happened on American soil. And I think sometimes folks forget when we talk about now, like, this isn't the country that we know. This isn't America.
It always has been.
Internment camps happened in America. These native schools happened in America. Slavery happened in America. Women being forcibly sterilized happened in America. All these things happened on this soil, and people made up reasons for it to happen. And so I think about how resilient families and communities have to be to still make it through that and for another generation to even be here. So when I think about organizing, and I think about why we do the work that we do, and why I do the work that I do, is because somebody did a lot of work for me to even get here.
Exactly.
My ancestors could have just jumped off the side of the boat and said, yeah, that's not for me. And I wouldn't put no blame on that either, right? People jump with their babies and like, I'm not going. And that happened. But some folks had to have made it from those shores through that Middle Passage and through whatever hell they went through, all the way up to the ones that I know and the things that they went through, my grandparents. So do something with your life, basically, is how I look at it. So I'm wondering what keeps you going, like what makes you want to stay in this work, which is, it's not easy.
It's not easy. Well, the resilience of our ancestors is the foundation of my work. Everything that you described, that resilience and that lineage of really strong women in my life that I in turn want to pass down to my daughter. And I know through having to decolonize my own mind and my own community and even my own family to this day, and wanting to ensure that my daughter can live in a community and in a society where we're all thriving together. And for her to also be part of that change. Now look, I have a little blue-eyed, blonde hair, white presenting daughter, and her and I have to do a lot of work to stand in that understanding of ourselves. And I want to be able to be that example for her to in turn continue the fight. I don't think the fight that we are in today and that our ancestors were in will ever stop. We're always going to have to push back on white supremacy. And I will always have to decolonize myself because of the society that we swim in. But, I really do believe that we can win, that we can change our society, and that all of the things that our ancestors did to fight and get us to the point that we are at today gives me hope that we can continue to fight and change society despite the the mess that we're in as a country right now.
How do you decolonize your mind? What does that work like?
You know, I grew up in a family, in a Latino family that taught me the word wetback. It's a very derogatory term for immigrant people that didn't understand the divide and conquer mindset of white supremacy. And I didn't know that term in particular was derogatory until I went to college and I started I joined a Latina sorority, and they were really huge activists on campus. And through them learned about Chicano studies and started learning about our history and the ways that organizing can change society and our community, and realized that I was taught a lot of hate. Well, at the same time, like, my family is very loving, but I had to understand those biases and racism and deconstruct that and understand and deal with that. And so that's part of the decolonizing, right, of my mind, like that white supremacy culture that shows up in society and really divides people of color.
Is that like the othering of folks? Because I know I've seen, especially in today's climate with this last election, and when people broke down how people voted, and then there were quite a few Latinos who voted for Trump. Same way with Black folks and what have you, and women, and thinking about that, that othering of, oh, but that's not me. When he talks about deporting immigrants, you're not talking about me. You're talking about them, because they are different. And so is that what you mean by like the divide and conquer?
I do. It is. And you know, through the way that whiteness is determined has always been a way of gaining power or losing power, right? It's all about power. Who has power in society to hoard wealth, to ensure that some people can or cannot vote, for instance. And so in a lot of Latino communities especially, it's easier for us to for some of our community to align themselves with whiteness and power because they're white presenting or they're not Black, right? And so for them to be, and then in turn to be able to say, well, I'm a citizen, I have my papers, and yet now this administration is deporting people whether or not you have citizenship. And realizing that even if you personally align yourself with whiteness, that doesn't mean you actually have power. So there's a hard reality that a lot of our community has to face right now, and a lot of pain that comes with that.
Yeah, because it's one thing to be grouped in with other folks for the sense of numbers. It's another thing to be grouped in because they actually want you there to belong.
Yes.
Hey there, Sticky Note listeners. This is your host, Erika Washington. I hope you've been enjoying all of these episodes of Sticky Note Conversations as much as I've had creating them. Creating a podcast was a longtime dream of mine, and I'm so privileged and excited to be able to do this and bring you new conversations weekly. However, Sticky Note Conversations, like any other podcast, is not free to make. It costs nearly $100,000 a year to produce both Sticky Note Conversations and American Dreams Reproductive Justice. It is my dream to continue doing this and to grow it, make it bigger, make it better, talk to more people, talk to some folks outside of the country. I want Sticky Note Conversations and American Dreams Reproductive Justice to tell the stories that you want to hear. But we need your help. If you find it in your heart to donate, please go to makeitworknevada.org and click the donate button.
So you're blue-eyed, blonde-haired little baby. What is your hope for her for the future? Like, what is it that, what seeds are you sowing now and hoping that helps her flourish in the future?
I have done a lot of work to deal with generational trauma in my family, particularly with the women in my family, so that she doesn't have to hold it. I would love for her to never have to think about or deal with substance abuse or physical abuse or other abuse that has happened in my family, for her to be able to really thrive and be happy and healthy. Now, that doesn't say there's a lot of those things that have happened in my family, and she's already at her young age at 5 had to deal with some of it because of some of her family. But the reality is, I really want her to be able to say that she had and has a happy childhood and doesn't have to deal with the generational trauma.
And so the work that you're doing now as the co-director of Childcare for Every Family, and you've been the co-director for how long now?
3 years.
It's been 3 years?
It's been 3 years.
3 years.
I know.
How does all of your experiences, your family, the good and the bad, the trauma and the joyous parts, and your Chicano studies and your organizing, how does that help you do this work for Childcare for Every Family?
At the Childcare for Every Family Network, we are attempting to intentionally center state-based work that is happening across the country. And one of our values is that we are centering a local to national campaign structure to really think about the fact that at the state level, there are so many ways that we're winning in childcare, and that's not happening at the federal level. It hasn't happened in a long time. Really trying
World War II.
Right. And so really trying to center that work, make sure that the folks that are on the ground doing the work in communities have the resources monetarily, as far being able to hire the staff that they need, having the comm structures, whatever it is, right, that they need to be able to have a state-based universal campaign that they're working on, and in addition, be able to plug into and be part of a federal universal childcare campaign structure. And so it's been a lot of experimenting to figure out like what works, how can we structure ourselves as a network and resource and challenge power so that our state-based partners can be at the table with us when we're making decisions on our policy principles. We're currently working on a vision bill, like what should childcare actually look like? And we're talking about care in all of its forms. So family childcare, family friend and neighbor care, childcare in a center, right? And care for children with disabilities that often goes into adulthood. And also rethinking about care and child care so that it's not just viewed as so that it's not just viewed so that parents can go to work, but actually care for families so that they can deal with their own mental health, so they can go grocery shopping, so they can participate in society and have a space for their children that they trust, that is high quality, and where the teachers and childcare providers are making living wages and thriving. And so all the work that I did on the ground in New Mexico for 12 years has really informed the ways that I look at childcare, and the way that we're thinking about how the care system should be set up to help the whole family.
When you become a parent and they give you all these warnings, oh, labor is hard, staying up late, or getting up early, and the diapers and all the things, like all these little scary things they say about when you become a parent. Mm-hmm. But it always, to me, feels like you're calling it like a jail sentence or a prison sentence. And that when people say, oh, well, I need childcare, oh, well, you had a baby, you should just, it's your responsibility, you should just stay home. Like constantly, like 24 hours a day, like I should never ever be separated to even go to the grocery store. Or heaven forbid, you might want to still have friends and do things that don't involve your children. Mm-hmm. And there's been this line forever, like it just makes it seem like you're a bad mom if you want to do something that has nothing to do with your child. Mm-hmm. And then people always preface it, well, I love my kids. I don't need anybody to tell me about how much they love their kids. At most, anybody that I'm around, my people, I know that they love their children. You don't have to preface that when you say, but I need a night out, or I need a break, or I need a nap. But you're like, well, I love my kids. Shh, go take a nap. Right. Go on vacation. Mm-hmm. Go away for 3 days for the weekend or whatever. Mm-hmm. It makes you a better parent too. It does. And I wonder how we get to that space of like real community, because when you talk about the different types of care, right? Mm-hmm. Like you have in-home daycare, which is what my children all experience. Mm-hmm. My oldest one went to a center for, like a couple months maybe. Mm-hmm. Always had a runny nose, always just looked up. She always looked a mess when I picked her up. And then I found this home daycare, and then the rest of my children went to the same daycare. Mm-hmm. And I loved it. And like I just texted her the other day to send pictures of my youngest who just graduated from high school. And yeah, I know, thank you. I'm so excited. The mountaintop was so close. I'm so glad it's here. But I told her, I said, well, you were a part of this, right? Like, we don't see each other much anymore, but, I keep her abreast because she did help me raise these kids. Like, she did a lot of hard work while I went to work and watched me grow as a parent. And being in community with people is how you raise children. And I just feel like if we can get to a space where we're doing it together, that not one person feels like a burden, or doesn't feel like a burden on just the parent, or you don't feel like you're not doing it right. And I think that's a big part of why a lot of moms, crash out, or you have postpartum that lasts for years, because it's too much. It's too much for just one person to have to deal with by themselves. I don't care if you're married or not. Like it's a lot.
It is. And so I'm a solo parent. I've got my little girl, 5 years old, and her older brother, my stepson, who is 13. And the only way that I am able to travel for work is because of my mom and my childcare provider. She's also, she runs a childcare center out of her home. And so last night she stayed the night there so that I could travel for work. And, my daughter has been there for the last 4, almost 5 years. And she is a part of our family. And I trust her fully with my child. And, I think the narrative in society is very individualistic.
Mm-hmm.
It's your fault that you didn't graduate high school. It's your fault you didn't go to college.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. But the reality is that that's a false narrative that allows for very powerful, rich, white people to thrive and hoard wealth.
And people have internalized that.
And
to
people
believe
have
it.
internalized
They believe
it.
it's their fault.
They do. They absolutely do. And I think that's the power of organizing with community. You know, I remember being in New Mexico on the ground working with parents of young children, and this parent telling me, you know, I thought it was my fault because I didn't graduate high school and I didn't go to college, and so I'm making these low wages. And in organizing in the community, I realized that I'm not broken. The system is broken, and I'm here to change it, right? And so that is the power of organizing. That's the power of us coming together as a community, as a society, to push back and change what systems are not working for us, right? And at the Childcare for Every Family Network, we always host with our partners a racist history of childcare workshop where we dig into that false narrative, the false narrative of the welfare queen, for instance, the false narrative that, you know, it's our fault. And often when we're trying to pass legislation to raise wages, to pass paid sick leave, to increase access to childcare, this is the same narrative that thrives and that has been internalized, as you said.
Yeah. I mean, when it used to be free, because of slavery, it used to be free, and when it wasn't free anymore, and now you want to be mad that somebody wants to be paid, you know, for it.
Same thing with labor. Labor used to be free because of slavery, and still to this day, we are trying to increase wages and pass paid sick leave and all of these things that our families need.
Makes me think about democracy. It's a question I always ask folks to define democracy. Like, how do you define democracy? And do you think we have it?
Such a big question.
Right. That's why I say it for the end.
The way that I see democracy playing out right now is everyone in the streets of LA pushing back on ICE. I think the only way that we have democracy is if people come together and fight and push back, because it is easy to lose. You know, our ancestors fought so hard to ensure that women could vote, that people of color could vote, and it does feel right now like that's slipping away from us day by day. But I believe that we still have it because people are in the streets in LA fighting really hard to ensure that they're protecting their communities and their families.
As someone whose family has been on this land for hundreds of years, and America crept up on you, what is your version of the American dream?
Well, my version of the American dream is being able to rest when we need to, and being able to have a global mindset, to understand that there's a lot happening in the world right now that is very painful, not only in our country, but in other places in the world as well. And it ultimately is going to affect us all. And I think my version, again, of the American dream is for us to decenter ourselves, to understand that our actions can also be have global repercussions, to push back on white supremacy, because it's always going to exist, through organizing, through community, and ultimately making sure that we can be joyous in community together, and that our kids can really just have a childhood that is happy and healthy.
I like the idea of joyousness. Mm-hmm. And it makes me wonder why people think joy is a frivolous thing, or that rest is a frivolous thing. Mm-hmm. And I know there's the rest, the nap ministries, and then there's rest is resistance. And, it's something that I think that I hope more people wrap their heads around, like what that actually means. And it's not about laziness, but about, if your doctor says, one thing they ask you, are you sleeping? Are you getting a good night's rest? Because it's necessary.
It is.
But there's this, this tagline that's been going around for years now, like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, or, you can't stop grinding. You got to do this 24 hours a day or whatever. And it's like, why? And think about who told you that was okay. Mm-hmm. And that stems from white supremacy, telling you to work yourself to death in order for you to get something that you can't use once you're dead.
Exactly.
You can't do anything with that. So how we get to that place where we think about rest and joyousness as a part of our daily intake, our daily bread. I'm not sure how we get there, because we do live in a very individualistic society.
We do. And I believe we get there through organizing, through true organizing, and shifting the narrative in our society and our community, and having universal childcare so that parents can rest, so that caregivers can rest. So it's, I think it's going to take a lot in our society to understand that, that false narrative that we've been fed. For instance, make America great again. It's a racist dog whistle.
Yes, ma'am.
We were never great, not for people of color. Mm-hmm. We were never great. And, it's in that same vein of being told that we have to work ourselves to death. It's all part of that white supremacy culture that we have to continue to fight back on in society, within ourselves, and so that we can have joy, so that we can center joy and rest in our lives.
Does your daughter see you rest?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. We love to cuddle and rest together.
That's good.
Absolutely.
Because I will say, I think it's not something that my children saw me do enough of. Mm-hmm. But I hadn't gotten to this point yet. It's one of those things of, if I was raising my children now, would I be doing differently? Mm-hmm. Not that I have any idea that I would ever want to start over. Like, I would never want, I actually don't want to do it again. But if there was a do-over button with all that I know now and the resources that I have now, things that I would have interjected and changed. Because to your point earlier about not passing along generational trauma and hurt, it's really difficult not to do, because sometimes you don't know what you're carrying until you have actually started to put that on your children, because of whether it could just be fear, the fear of the unknown, the fear of them getting hurt, the fear of life, and you place that fear on children who don't have any fear, really. They're just out here, twirling around and having a good time. And all of the weight of the world starts to ground them into this space of becoming an adult. And I think sometimes we put a lot on them that we don't necessarily need to.
Absolutely. You know, well, maybe you'll have the opportunity with grandkids someday.
Maybe. Look, when they get to that space and they want to be there, I told them I'm going to be the best grandma ever.
Right.
I'm going to do all the things that they're going to be like, wait, who is this lady? I am. I'm going to be that one.
Well, the thing I will say is that I am very blessed with the resources to be able to take my daughter on vacations. She is a great vacationer. She loves to vacation. And growing up, I had a very loving family, and we would drive all over New Mexico. I've got family all over the state. And so we would drive and stay with family, and those were our vacations, and they were wonderful, right? But I want to be able to take my daughter out of the country. I want her to understand the world, right? And grow. I saw, and I still see how hard my mom in her 60s works, and how hard my grandmother worked, and her mom. And I remember being 19 as an undergrad, and my grandmother coming to me and saying, "Don't worry, Mija, you're gonna find a husband." And I was like, "Grandma, I'm not looking for a husband. I'm trying to graduate college."
Right.
But getting married for her was survival.
Yeah.
And so when she saw that I could take care of myself, she came to me years later and said, "Mija, don't ever get married." But you know, I tell that story because my grandmother, survival to her was finding a man that was going to provide. Yeah. And she had 8 kids, and she worked on a farm, and she took care of all of her siblings on that farm when her mom got sick. And it was always a matter of how are my kids and my grandkids and my great grandkids going to survive and thrive? And so I see, you know, my grandmother and my mom having worked so hard in the home, and my mom did very hard manual labor, and trying to, part of that, breaking that generational trauma has been showing my daughter that, you know, I'm still working really hard, but in a different way, and trying to change the way that we thrive in society, and changing also the way that we show up for our community and our family through organizing.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. So it's access to resources.
It is.
And access to choices. So we can thrive in whatever way we want to.
Together.
Together. With or without a husband.
Yes.
Erica, it's been great having a Erica and Erica conversation.
Yes, it has been, Erica.
And I'm so glad that we got to run into each other on the Sticky Notes on the Fly down here in cloudy Montgomery, Alabama. But it's really good to see you.
You as well.
So thank
you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
It's been a great conversation.
Yes. So now we get to have an off-the-record conversation. So,
great.
Yay. That's been Sticky Notes on the Fly. And let me do that. See, I did it for you.
Thanks for listening to Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. Hosted and executively produced by Erika Washington. With editing by Black Gypsy LLC and Simone Endres. Special thanks to KUNV 91.5 in Las Vegas. This show is powered by Make It Work Nevada, a project of Tides Advocacy. And a special thank you to Grove GT Teague and Eno Savad, who made our new theme song, Way Below Acceptable.